Death is a certainty of life, and for the believers, the hereafter is also a certainty. And yet, as time passes, it seems that society is drifting farther and farther away from God. What is the cause of all this godlessness, and what can be done about it now? Join us in our discussion on Beacon of Truth.
इस्लाम कुछ भी हो जाएंगे हम जहाँ भी के जाना पड़े हमें जाएंगे हम जहाँ भी के जाना पड़े हमें.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Beacon of Truth, a live program in which we discuss a variety of contemporary issues relevant to today's young Muslims. To help analyze these subjects, we get the views and the expertise of some of our guests, as well as the general public. You too can get in touch with us with your comments and your questions. You can send us your questions via Twitter and Instagram using hashtag BeaconMTA. Today we are also conducting an online poll about the subject at hand. On social media, we asked you that is God or a higher power a significant part of your life? Inshallah, we will share the results later in the program. Today, I am joined by my two colleagues, Imtiaz Sara Sahib and Izaz Khan Sahib, both of whom are serving as imams and as missionaries of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community here in Canada. The society and the era that we live in today, it is defined as being very advanced and very progressive. But when we reflect on the current state of affairs, we find that there are many places where we are lacking. People are excessively concerned with material gains, we're influenced by unethical and immoral practices, and we give precedence to worldly affairs instead of worrying about the hereafter. One thing is for certain in this life, and that is that it will end. And yet we still run blindly towards things that are temporary. The modern society we witness has lost sight of what matters most in the end. And as a result of this, we see that immorality and godlessness, they have become a commonplace. How has materialism contributed to this widespread godlessness? How has modern technology and the media industry perpetuated these ideas? How have certain religious ideologies played a role in causing people to run away from religion? Inshallah, today we will be discussing some of these and more. But first, let's see what people in the general public believe about God, about religion, and the purpose of life.
For me, something can't come from nothing, you know? So like, even with the theory that people, the Big Bang Theory and whatnot, is something can't come from nothing. So whatever was before, whatever was after, I don't know. But I think there's something.
So I do believe in God. My family's Catholic. Today is actually the day before we start a big fasting part of the Catholic Church. So I'm going to have pancakes for dinner in preparation for giving up something for Lent for the next 40 days. I'm not very good at making it to church every week, just kind of with how our schedules go. And I've definitely had a hard time kind of throughout my life. There's definitely phases where I'm not really sure what I believe in, but kind of I think at the end of the day I always come back to my Catholic faith.
I do believe in God because I think that, first of all, the world that we live in, I feel like it's so complex and it's so beautiful in the sense that it cannot just simply come out of nothing. You know what I mean? I was watching a video online and they were showing a coloring book and they were asking people, atheists, and they were saying, do you think that this coloring book could have come out of absolutely nothing? And they were saying, no, that would make no sense. And he said, well, exactly. It makes no sense that a world like this one would come out of nothing. You know, there has to be a creator, a higher force. And in my case, I believe that it is God.
So, gentlemen, let's get right into this discussion today on godlessness. Imtiaz Sahib, let's start with you. We know in society we're exposed to so many distractions, there's so many material pursuits. So how has materialism contributed to godlessness in society?
Yes, certainly it has contributed towards godlessness in our society. So what is materialism? Materialism is a tendency to consider material possession and physical comfort as more important than our spiritual values. It is an undeniable fact that we live in a society where we're bombarded and influenced by materialistic ideas, and as a result, people are running an unending marathon and competing against each other in greed and in worldly pursuits such as money, house, car, latest gadgets, latest brand of purse or shoes, or the list goes on and on. And just to put things in perspective, how we are bombarded in our society, in the U.S. Last year, over $206 billion were spent to embed consumer messages in every conceivable space, from TV shows to apps to websites to billboards and even washrooms. People are enticed and lured to when they are shown the lifestyles of celebrities and professional players. They're shown their expensive cars and huge mansions. So people try to imitate that. So here's what happens at a family level. Family sometimes is encouraged or pressured by relatives or family friends that, maybe you should move on to a nice house as we are living. And this come to pressure. Family is not in a position to buy a house, and they buy a house which they cannot afford. And as a result, there's a lot of pressure every month to pay off that huge sum of mortgage. And there are also other financial needs. So everyone starts to work. When they're working, they're not spending time together. When they don't spend time together, kids get neglected. Their education and moral training get distracted and suffers. So kids start spending time outside, and they basically sit in a bad company or spend a lot of time on social media, things which are not productive. So one materialistic decision leads to the ruin of peace and comfort of one home. Research has shown that there are more people, the more people value the materialistic aspiration and goals, the less happy they are. It is also seen in such people that depression and anxiety and substance abuses tend to be higher. And scientists have also found that the materialistic values and pro-social values are like a seesaw. The more materialistic values go high, pro-social values tend to go down. So it is important to know that we're not saying that these things are bad and it is a no-go. Islam is a religion that teaches us contentment, that teaches us moderation, and we are taught in the Holy Quran a prayer, Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanatan wa fil akhirati hasanatan wa qina adhaban nar. This prayer we pray at least over 30 times in daily in our prayers. So the whole idea behind this prayer is that we're asking God to give us the hasana. And what are those hasana? That includes money, wealth, house, nice clothing, good food, a good wife and children. So all of these things we're asking, but at the same time we're taught in the Holy Quran that moderation is the key, contentment is the key, and we should be focusing on things that are more meaningful in our lives and things that lead to God and His pleasure.
Now, Isasab, of course, materialism is definitely one of those factors. But living in this day and age, in this modern society, how is that being perpetuated? I know Imtiaz touched upon it, but if you could explain that more clearly.
So it's just as Imtiaz was saying that, these advertisements, they follow us everywhere we go. Even on our way to the washroom, inside the washroom. And these ads are quite effective. People are paid a lot of money to attract us to buy those things and to ascribe to those ideas, right? I mean, I have one example, all the way back in London, when we used to take the bus from Masjid Fazl to Batiftu and back, we used to change buses at a place called Wimbledon. And there was a bus shelter there, and it had a picture of a man yawning, simply just yawning. And you would look at that, and instinctively, even if you weren't tired, you would start to yawn, right? And there was an advertisement for, some iron supplement, right? So even if you didn't need that, you would say, man, I really need the iron supplement, right? So, I mean, this is what the impact of these advertisements can be, and this is the phenomenon that's occurring with immorality and indecency. We are all exposed to it. We're all desensitized to these things that we witness in society. I mean, in advertisement marketing, there's something called effective frequency, which means that the more an ad is shown, the more people will have a reaction to it. And then if that ad is very widespread, people will ascribe to the idea, even though it may just be a few ads, right? And I mean, if we're taking a look at immorality and indecency, let's take a look at the entertainment industry. In 2010, CBS did an interview with Drake, a very popular hip hop artist. And the journalist asked him a very pointed question. She said that, don't you think that rap lyrics are objectifying women? And he said, there's a very fine line between wit and comedy, and this is what we're doing. Pretty much avoid the question. Follow-up question was very pointed, and she said that, what does your mom think of all this? And he avoided the question again, and he said, my mom's my biggest supporter, sends me really long text messages, so on and so forth. A producer of rap videos was being introduced, and the journalist asked him that, why is it that women are being sexualized in these videos? And he said that, look, we're entertainers, we're giving the people what they want. Follow-up question was very pointed as well, very direct. She asked that, would you allow your own daughter to star in your next rap video? And he totally avoided the question. So there's hypocrisy in these advertisements that we see, and this immorality and indecency that we're exposed to. But like I said before, we are living in this society, we are desensitized to it, but at the same time, we must understand and realize that the religion of Islam and the Holy Quran, they do guide us on how we should approach this. Where in Surah Al-Mu'minun, God Almighty states that وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ, that this is a quality of the believers, that they shun and they avoid all things that are vain. So the religion of Islam does teach us how to navigate in this society.
Jazakallah. I mentioned in the beginning of the program that you can send us your comments, you can send us your questions via Twitter and Instagram using hashtag BeaconMTA. A lot of people are responding to some questions that we asked on Twitter about God and godlessness. They've shared their experiences and their thoughts and some great tips. We urge all of our viewers to head on over to @beacon_MTA to benefit from them. I will share some of these comments that have been coming in. This first comment comes from South Korea. This is from KT Shamim Sahiba. She comments that here in South Korea, no religion is the most popular religion. The importance of religion and the existence of God must be emphasized. And she says faith comes through, number one, a personal two-way connection with God. And the second thing she says is a personal connection with someone who has a personal connection with God. Similarly, Ramin Akbar Saiba, she writes that the more we pray and ask for forgiveness, the more we can see the blessed signs of God. That will help us to become convinced that God exists. All of God's attributes are eternal. As God spoke to mankind before, so He will continue to speak to mankind. And inshallah, this is one of the things that we will touch upon. One last comment. This comes from Jalsa Salana account from Burkina Faso. They write that one can maintain firm faith in God if he has experienced His existence, if he has seen his prayers answered or experienced the blessings linked with the remembrance of God, then he will never leave his faith. Jazakallah for sending us your comments and your questions. Now, the purpose of religion is to bring one closer to God and to make one a spiritual being with a high level of morals. And in contrast, we see that religion itself, it has played a vital role in fact, advancing godlessness to the level that we are witness to today. And it is very unfortunate that godlessness is not just a word that describes atheistic beliefs. It also refers to the lack of God among those who claim to be godly. We'll be discussing how religion has also contributed to godlessness. But before that, let's take a look at what people of the general public believe about religion.
I think spiritually, I'd like to, be in tune with the ancestors or whatever, but I don't think like organized religion for me. More so like I don't think Catholicism is not my thing. Other kind of religions like I can't speak on because I wasn't raised within those denominations.
I'm very religious. I had a special relationship with God since I was about 4. I was a Bible-thumping Catholic kid. So since I learned everything about Jesus, I decided to take it in university and study Islam. And as soon as I studied Islam, I fell in love with it. And then just to add to that, my life was good, alhamdulillah, after that point. And then it went kind of bad because I started drinking and doing bad things. And then I ended up in prison. I served 78 days. I had to go into solitary confinement because I didn't know what it was. And then I actually found God there. When I converted to Islam, I hadn't been doing my prayers or washing properly or what have you, so I learned how to do that properly in Islam. In jail. I learned more about Islam, make a long story short. When I finally prayed 5 times for the day and performed wudu properly, Allah opened the gates and let me out of jail.
Okay, so I'll be honest, I'm not really that active because right now we get busy working and all that. I always work during Sundays. I have no time to go to church. So what I do is that before I sleep and right when I wake up, I do the sign of the cross. And I think that's good.
So, we're arguing now that godlessness is rampant in modern society. And we also find that religion has played a role in this. Or I should say, those who do not follow religion correctly have played a role in this. And of course, Christianity being one of the major religions. So Imtiaz, if you could kind of touch on how Christianity has contributed to this surge of atheistic beliefs.
Yes, Anand Sahib, unfortunately, this is a very dark chapter of religious history. Religion has immense power, we know, to forge a moral, just, and godly society and a force of good against evil. But when religion is used for personal gains and personal agendas and political gains, then it becomes a very deadly tool and can have very devastating effects. And as a result of that, it can push people away from religion. And time and again, we have seen how religion has been hijacked by its so-called followers. It has happened to all religions. Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism, and Christianity is no exception. As a matter of fact, history is filled with many instances and examples where unspeakable acts have been committed by Christians. For example, the colonization of the various parts of the world, the transatlantic slave trade, the Crusades, the killing of hundreds of thousands of innocent people, and the Spanish Inquisition, then imprisonment of great scientists like Galileo. Then a great scholar, English scholar, William Tyndale, was burnt in public, and guess what was his crime? His crime was that he translated Bible into English. Then there are certain beliefs of Christian faith that pushed people away from God. For example, the Christian teaching of celibacy, which is against human nature. And it is enforced in Catholic Church, and we know and we find out in the news that many Christian Catholic priests and bishops are involved in sexual abuse. For centuries, sexual abuse in the church has been systemically covered up. So this has also pushed people away. And right here at home, church-administered residential schools. The purpose of these schools was to remove the indigenous children from their homes, from the influence of their homes, language, culture, and religion, and to assimilate them into Canadian culture, into Anglo and Canadian religion, which is was Catholicism, right? And other churches were also involved. And so Quebec history in Canada is also very interesting. Quebec is the biggest province of Canada where Christianity was once thriving, and almost religion was imposed on people, and that led to reaction of the people. There was a time when churches were packed with worshipers, but now worshipers are nowhere to be seen, completely abandoned the church. According to different reports, the churches or church buildings are rotting in Quebec, and there is no one there to take care of these buildings. More and more church buildings are going on sale. And sometimes it is hard to find a buyer even when selling a church for $1. Can you believe that? And the Canadian newspaper, The Star, wrote an interesting piece, and the heading of that article was "Quebec Churches Need Miracle." And as a matter of fact, this morning a piece was published in CBC which said that from sacred to secular, Canada set to lose 9,000 churches. So, Hanan Sahib, this is what happened when religious people act and behave in a manner which is godless.
And of course, we're not saying that the pristine teachings of Jesus Christ, he never taught these things, but it's when people, they use those their own vested interest to use religion as a tool.
Exactly.
Right. And Izasab, to be fair with Christianity, the religion has contributed to godlessness, and Islam has its fair share of that as well, fair share of lawlessness and godlessness. So if you can kind of touch on how those beliefs have contributed to the rise of irreligion and atheism.
Yeah, so I mean, it all comes back to what Imtiaz Saab was just saying, that Christianity had a dark history, right, that it's still reeling from. It seems as if nowadays, what we're seeing in the media, it seems as if the religion of Islam is experiencing some sort of dark times as well, right? I mean, just the actions of Muslim countries, the subjects of Muslim kingdoms, what they're subjected to, the lawlessness, the oppression, and the mistreatment, it's actually turning youth away from the religion of Islam entirely. Right? I mean, like the acts of Taliban, what Taliban did, what ISIS is doing, what other extremist groups continue to do, this makes people question the validity of the religion itself, right? I mean, recently in the social media where we're seeing this trend of women who were mistreated, left the religion of Islam, and now they're trying to flee these Muslim countries, right? What I think is that nowadays, these human rights violations, and one thing with that is that it's difficult to quantify. Right? Because atheism, as we're speaking about, it's not only in the West where we're here right now. It's actually increasing in the Middle East as well, but it's very difficult to quantify because these people live in fear. I think bringing it back to living in Canada and in the West, I think there's another situation that also happens, is that we're living in a advanced society, more or less, so to speak. People are educated, and sometimes our youth, they require answers to questions that, have more reason based in them. Otherwise, they're not really convinced about the teachings of the religion of Islam, even though the religion of Islam has those foundations as well. I mean, look at how the Holy Prophet Muhammad ﷺ himself taught Islam to those people at that time. He would use reasoning according to their level of, intellect. He would use analogies and anecdotes, with regards to prayer. He would say that, if there was a stream outside of somebody's house and they bathed in it 5 times a day, would there be any filth left on them? So this is how he promoted prayer and how it purifies you. He would draw pictures and images into the sand, drawing lines that this is faith and these are the paths of shaitan, so stay on the path of faith. I mean, one thing that we may do instinctively is from a very young age, our children begin to fear God. We should teach them to love God, so that's exactly what the essence of taqwa is, right? And I think that not overburdening them is one very big thing, right? Hazrat Abdullah bin Masud radiallahu anh, he used to give lectures every Thursday, and people used to say that, your sermons are so great, we wish for you to teach us every single day. And he would say that I'm doing exactly what the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, would do, that he would make sure that we didn't get bored. And that's what the wording of the ahadith says, that he didn't want us to get bored of the religion. So I think that, there's a lot going for the religion of Islam. It's just a matter of how we as educators and parents, convey that message to the youth of today.
Jazakallah. We learned how religion itself has contributed to godlessness, and this was in fact a prophecy of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that in the latter days godlessness would be rampant. The Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he also prophesied that a Messiah would appear who would revive the faith and combat this godlessness and this immorality and this extravagance. The Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat believes in that Messiah who was foretold to revive the faith in these latter days. And this begs the question that where does Jamaat Ahmadiyya stand in all of this? But before getting into this discussion, let's hear from some of the people in the public and their views about organized religion.
I believe that everyone can do their own thing. I don't think that everyone else should put their views on other people, being like, you should believe in this one thing, other ones should believe in another thing. I believe that everyone grew up in a different way. They grew up in different parts of the world. They grew up with different parents believing in different things. So I don't think that people should be criticized for their religion and the type of religion they go through, because everyone has a different upbringing, and we don't really know, and everyone has different religions, and they all have different ideals. So we can't entirely say, oh, which one is the right one, which one is the most right.
I don't know, I mean, I feel like organized religion in a sense is good, because it's, I don't know, it brings a sort of like balance to what we do. You know, everyone, like even if you're Catholic, if you drink and do all these things, you always have like in the back of your head, okay, you know, I'm Catholic and I always have to try to do good. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's what organized religion brings. But at the same time, like I feel like in my sense, like I'm Christian, and in the Christian church, I feel like there shouldn't be religion, but there should be what I believe is love.
First of all, I would say extremists tend to be terrorists. There are Christian extremists, there are Muslim extremists, there are also Jewish extremists. You know, that causes terror. Yeah. And I'm glad we break through the thick layer of suffering, of terror, of violence. And now we're here in Western civilization, especially here in Canada. We are tolerant, we like each other. Yeah? We try not to trigger other feelings with your own faith. Yeah? You can say, okay, I'm Christian, you're probably Jewish, I do not like you because you're Jewish. No, that's not.
So from most of the comments that we just heard, it seems that most people, they do have an idea or a belief in God, but they're very averse to organized religion. So Imtiaz Sahab, let's talk about the real purpose of religion, the real purpose of faith. Why do we need it? How can we know what a true religion is? Because all religions, they claim to be true.
Yes, this is a very interesting and important question that continues to bother the young minds of today. And there are so many religions out there in the world, and all of them claim to be true. So how do we know which religion is true? Before I talk about that, I do want to highlight why we need faith. Why it's what's the reason to have a faith, and that is the promised Messiah, Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, talks about it, and he says that the whole purpose of faith is to acquire certainty about God, and certainty of that level as if you see God with your own eyes. And he says, why do we need certainty about God? Because at the end of the day, we want to save ourselves from sin, and sin wants to destroy us spiritually. And if we do not believe in God, in a being who is a living God, who punishes the offender and bestows everlasting joy upon those who do righteous deeds, then we will be protecting ourselves. Then the Prophet ﷺ further explains this by saying that when we know the consequences of something in our daily lives, we don't go ahead and do that act. For example, no one swallows poison intentionally. No one stands in front of a wild tiger. Why? Because we know what would be the consequences. Similarly, why human being commits sin? It is because we don't have that certainty with regards to God. So the duty of a person is to acquire that certainty with regard to God, that God really exists, and adopt a religion that helps him to achieve this level of certainty. Now the question is, how can you achieve such certainty? The promised Messiah ﷺ says that you cannot acquire the certainty through mere tales and stories. One has to experience God. One has to experience God through his converse and extraordinary signs. And if you can't do that, then you must be in the company of somebody who has that communion with God Almighty. Now the next question is, your original question, that how do we know which religion is true? The promised Messiah ﷺ also discusses this question, and he says that a seeker after truth must look for three things in a religion. First, what it talks about God, what it says about God, what are the attributes it promotes. So is it promoting a perfect God or a living God? And all the attributes, evaluate that. The second thing a religion must possess is how religion impacts his personal life, how the religion's teachings impacts his relationship with other human beings, which courses this religion teaches takes him to, whether it will be easy for him to follow these instructions which are given in this religion, whether it will these teachings are according to the law of nature, and all these things. And the third thing the promised Messiah alayhi salam says, that a religion should promote a living God, which you can experience God, not just read in the books or hear good arguments about God, but you must be able to experience God, a living God. And we believe that Islam is that religion that invites all mankind towards one true living God. And the teachings of Islam also are such that are for all times and to come, and everlasting teachings.
Now, Izaz Sahab, adding to that, what Imtiaz Sahab has just said, can we show any objective proofs for the truthfulness of Islam?
Right, so just picking up off of that, just because we have faith and we claim to believe in God Almighty, believing in His existence and the power of prayers, it doesn't mean that we entirely ignore the fact that there is evidence linking Islam as a truthful religion, right? Take for example the divine origins of the Holy Quran. How is it possible that an unlettered man more than 1400 years ago in a desert in Arabia was able to speak about anything that was called a Big Bang? Or how was he able to speak about something, like black holes exist, or that the universe is actually expanding, right? The promised Messiah, ﷺ, with regards to Islam, he says that the teachings of a true religion should be so complete and perfect that the human mind should not be able to propose anything that is greater than it. And we see this in the religion of Islam. It is a deen, it is a way of life. It teaches us what to stay away from and what to adopt. Take alcohol, for example. We know that latest studies are showing that it's linked with cancer. And they are saying that the safest level of alcohol to consume is 0. If men and women observed hijab as prescribed by the religion of Islam, we would not have the Me Too movement, right? Take the consumption of pork, for example. Latest studies are saying that pork also leads to cancer. And take LeBron James, for example, world famous super athlete. He plays basketball in the NBA. News articles in 2016 will say that he gave up eating pork in 2009. And he says that I could not have done anything better for my career. Now, he may be doing it for his own health reasons, but he's not the only one who needs optimal health to perform at an optimum, level. Each and every single one of us needs that, right? But saying that, we do believe that our faith is not founded on these academic reasons, right? Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Rabi Rahimahullah used to say that a faith that is only established on academic reasons, it doesn't ever translate into responsible godly behavior, and that's a lack of what we're seeing in the Muslim world. One of our convert brothers, he was telling me that sometimes I go to the masjid and some of our youth come up to me and they say, tell us the most strongest and powerful argument for the existence of God, because they say that he is somebody who has questioned it, lived a life as a Christian, Sunni Muslim, and then accepted Jamaat Ahmadiyya. So he came back and he was telling me, I just think to myself that we're Ahmadi Muslims. We've accepted the Messiah of the age. We believe in the power of prayer. We're far beyond any of these basic questions that, God doesn't exist because you can't see him. Right? So our faith is not founded on these academic principles. Our faith is founded upon Jamaat Ahmadiyya and Khilafat Ahmadiyya.
Yes, absolutely. If you look at the early history of the Jamaat Ahmadiyya, at the time of the advent of the promised Messiah and Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, people for all different faiths, including Muslims, said they didn't believe in a living God. They said God used to speak and he used to hear. He no longer speaks and hears. The promised Messiah alayhi salam said, no, the God of Islam speaks today as he spoke in the past, and he hears today as he heard in the past. And all of his attributes are as valid today as they were in the past. So he said, you can come to Qadian and see for yourself how Allah has blessed me with his communion. And then this day and age, the promised Messiah alayhi salam's community is being led by the worldwide head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, Hazrat Amirul Mu'mineen, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih al-Khamis, Ayyadahullah Ta'ala bin Nasr Aziz. And he is the elect of God. God speaks to him. And there are countless incidents that Ahmadi Muslims can quote around the world, that how Allah the Exalted blessed him with his communion and the extraordinary acceptance of his prayers.
Jazakallah. I mentioned in the beginning of the program that we're also conducting an online poll today. We asked you that is God or a higher power a significant part of your life? So we have the results of that poll in now. And 97% are saying that God or a higher power is a significant part of their life. And 2% are saying no, he is not. And 1% are saying somewhat. So 97%, believe or have some kind of affinity towards God.
Yes, it's like we were talking about earlier. It's important. It's important to have a belief in God, but at the same time, we have to act in godly manner. We have given example how religious people who are following religion behaved in a manner which was ungodly.
Yes, a lot of comments and questions have been coming in on social media. One question that we asked was that how can youth safeguard themselves from the ill effects of society? This very thoughtful comment comes in from Faria Zafar Saiba. She says that I like having constant reminders around me. She gives the example, namaz alarms on my phone, Pathway to Peace sticker on my laptop, Jamaat pens, notebooks and bookmarks, Alaysallah ring, Waqfino scarf, etc. She says this way, no matter where I am or what's happening, I'm always reminded of the importance, what's important. And there's a very good question here, this from Sabiha Ashraf Saiba. She asked that if someone who used to believe in God stops believing in Him, how do you increase the belief and that they start believing in God again?
The quick answer would be, as Huzur Anwar Talab bin Asl Aziz answered in one of the classes he takes with the youth. And he said the best way is to present your own example, how God has changed your life, how God is an important part of your life, and how by adopting and acting upon, obeying the injunctions of God has transformed your life. When you see that, when somebody sees that who used to believe in God, then automatically it will attract him or her towards God.
Jazakallah. And another comment, another question that we asked on social media, that what can parents do to safeguard their youth? And this one comment comes from Varda Faryal Saiba. She says, firstly, educate yourself so you can educate your children, have open discussions in contemporary issues, and be prepared and open to touch different topics. Communication is the key, so ensure your children feel comfortable talking to you. And another question, this is from F. Farouk Saiba. She asks that, why is it that people are becoming more and more averse to religion? How can one defend their belief in God using logic, reason, to those who question this?
So I think we've already answered why is it that people are becoming averse to the idea of God and godlessness. With regards to how can we defend our religion, Huzur Anwar, may Allah be his helper, has answered this question on various occasions when people have asked him. And he has said that, if you want to prove the need of religion and the truthfulness of the religion of Islam, you should read the introduction to the study of the Holy Quran. And Huzur Anwar, may Allah be his helper, has also said that the book Our God by Hazrat Mirza Bashir Ahmad Sahib, may Allah be pleased with him, is also very good for the basic arguments that people usually propose with regards to the existence of God. And also, Huzur Anwar, may Allah be his helper, has also said that Revelation, Rationality, Knowledge, and Truth, chapters 5 and 6 would be good. So these are some things that we can read, study, and equip ourselves with those arguments. But at the same time, Huzur Anwar, may Allah be his helper, has said that we need to be wise and use our own wisdom and intellect when arguing with atheists, that there is a proper place and time of when we should use these arguments. So that's exactly what we should be doing.
Jazakallah. And this comment comes from Hana Saiba. She says that doing parda is one of the best ways to be protected from these evils. She says that it is a physical reminder because you wear it for Allah, and a spiritual reminder that you know that Allah will always protect you and that you do parda to win His love. Jazakallah to everyone who has sent in their comments and questions. We'll take one last question. Someone asked that, how can we safeguard ourselves from consumerism? So we talked earlier how consumerism is one of those leading things towards godlessness. So how can we protect ourselves from that?
Yes, it's impossible to actually avoid it, to be honest. If you're watching a YouTube video or you're driving your car on highway, there are billboards everywhere, and if you have to watch a video, the ad has to be played first, and then you will be able to watch the video. So how can we protect ourselves? Islam teaches us to control ourselves, and then we earlier talked about it, contentment, and before buying anything, we should just simply ask ourselves one simple question: do I really need this? If you need it, by all means, go ahead and buy it. But just stop yourself for one quick second and ask yourself, do I really need it?
And one of the key aspects of the Tehreek-e-Jadid scheme was living a simple life. So for us as Ahmadi Muslims, of course, this is one of the things that we can do, is to cut down on consumerism by leading a very simple life and leading an austere life. Right. Jazakallah, gentlemen. Godlessness is a growing trend. The implications associated with disbelief and godlessness, they are evident to everyone. We see the society steadily increasing in immorality and materialism. We're influenced by unethical and immoral practices that are perpetuated in the media and everywhere around us. In the midst of all of this, there is a ray of hope, and that is Ahmadiyya, the true Islam. It presents a very sound and compelling argument for God that resonates with every sincere seeker of truth. Each year, hundreds of thousands of people accept it because they witness a living God. In our youth, sometimes we don't recognize God. So we asked one of our elders, respected Maulana Mubarak Ahmad Nazir Sahib, who has lived an entire lifetime, and what conclusion he has come to about God. Let's hear what he had to say.
The question is, where is God? Does God really exist? The Holy Quran clearly states that when people ask, where is God? وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي أَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. Tell them that I am near you. God says in the Holy Quran, نَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ. I am nearer to you than your jugular vein. Look at the jugular vein that is throbbing over here. I am nearer you. If you still do not see God, you can see God in your being. You can see God in your own body. That look at the signal. I command my finger to stand, and look at the signal going to my finger, and my finger stands. इसलिए हज़रत नवाब मुबारका बेगम साहब ने कहा है ना दिखाई दूँ तो ये फिक्र कर कहीं फ़र्क ना हो निगाह में. तुम्हारी निगाह में फ़र्क होगा. There must be something wrong with your insight, the vision of your insight, the acceptance of prayer. Look at how we offer our prayers, and Allah Ta'ala accepts those prayers. Everything in life depends upon water. An unlettered man 1400 years ago said this. Everything living depends upon water. And look at how when these airships go to the moon, go to Mars or go to other places, you know what they look? They look for water. Because if water is there, then life is there. If water is not there, the fulfillment of this prophecy alone shows God the Almighty and shows the truthfulness of the Holy Prophet. That 1400 years ago, a man who was Ummi, he said these words. I can say with full confidence that God exists. He is there. He listens. He is not an academic God. He is a listening God. He is a speaking God. He speaks. He listens. He accepts. Lucky we are that we are in the lap of God. We are in the Khilafat Ahmadiyya, and we are in the lap of not only the Khilafat Ahmadiyya, but in reality we are in the lap of Allah Ta'ala. May Allah Ta'ala bless us all.
Jazakallah, Maulana Mubarak Ahmad Nazir Sahib. As you've heard, God does exist, and all it requires from us is to be sincere in our efforts in finding Him and to take that first step. Jazakallah, gentlemen, for this very interesting discussion. Thank you for tuning in and joining our conversation. Join us again same time next week at 1900 GMT on Beacon of Truth. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you all.
सदाक़ते इस्लाम कुछ भी हो जाएंगे हम जहाँ भी के जाना पड़े हमें जाएंगे हम जहाँ کے جانا پڑے ہمیں